morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We felt it important to have this open forum to respond to questions you have about the current conditions with the pandemic and our response to those conditions. I'm going to make some very brief remarks, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. And joining me are Kelly Long, our school nurse, Sharon Finella, who is having some technical difficulties and will be joining us momentarily, Mimi McKeon, our lower school head, and Evan Kurtz, our middle school head. So I just want to acknowledge that obviously conditions regionally and nationally are changing. Cases are increasing. We had a remarkable 11-week run of no cases on campus, but we knew that that would end at some point, and it did last week. It surprised us, and our back to school plan has a contingency to respond to cases, and we're following that plan, and I think it's serving us well. So we are prepared. Our protocols are working, and we are able to handle this. Again, though, this is a fluid situation, and we need to remain vigilant and aware of trends and advice from health professionals, and we continue to do so. I just want to talk briefly about some principles that have served us well from the beginning of school that I want to reemphasize. And the first is that our decisions and protocols are always informed by best practices and advice of health professionals. Science and facts matter, and we are guided by those science and facts. Two is we've erred on the side of caution. Our back to school plan is a bit more stringent than some other independent schools. I think it has served us well. Again, very few cases, and we will continue to err on the side of caution. When we can move back to normalcy, while also maintaining the health and safety of our community, we will do so. But for right now, we're really putting a pause on any changes to our protocols just in light of what's happening beyond our school campus. I really think compassion and empathy matter. All of us need to show it. All of us need to feel it. When we feel compassion and empathy, our decisions are better and our actions are more thoughtful. So I want to urge all of you to continue to try to foster those qualities in yourself and each other. And I think, again, it serves us well as a community. And finally, I just want to acknowledge the obvious. This pandemic has been hard, really hard on all of us, harder on some of us than others. But what I believe is that we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're certainly seeing some great news out of the vaccine front. And hopefully the new year will bring some new management of the pandemic and some new vaccines, which will materially change conditions. So with that said, let's go to Q&A. And if you want to ask a question, there's a Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Simply click on it and type in your question. I'll read your questions out loud, and then the right responder will respond to them. So let's start hearing from you, and please start logging in. Just waiting for some questions. Okay, here's one. This is definitely going to go to Kelly. Will PCR testing, perhaps pooled surveillance testing, be made available mandatory for students and staff in order to rapidly identify asymptomatic infections in the prep community?
Sorry about that, everyone. I had to unmute. Good morning. At this time, we don't have any plans to do that type of large-scale testing. It's actually not recommended by most professionals at this time. When you do that kind of testing, it's very limited. Testing really only tells you if you have a positive case on that day. It doesn't tell you what can happen tomorrow, the next day, or the next day. So it's a very limited tool, and it's not advisable at this time in schools.
Okay. Our next question is, at what point would you consider separating the grade levels again? I'm not sure what this question is getting at because the grade levels are separate, but Kelly, you're nodding your head, so maybe you have an answer.
I suspect they're referring to recess, for example, maybe within the grade level, because all our grade levels are cohorted separately and each class is cohorted. We do allow the entire grade level to participate in recess together. And in the middle school, advisory groups are permitted to meet first thing in the morning together. And we have had no evidence thus far that conducting our days that way has been a problem. Now, if something were to change in the future that shows us that we need to go back to complete cohorting those classes outside of recess or middle school lunch or advisory, we absolutely will reconsider doing that. But at this time, we have seen no problem in conducting those periods that way.
Okay, we're getting a few more questions via chat. If you could put your questions in the Q&A, that would just make it easier for us. But let me go to chat and see what we have. Okay, what is the contingency plan if a switch to remote learning is required during the holiday break? Perhaps one of the division heads could start answering that.
Good morning, everybody. If we have to make a change, switch to remote learning after the winter break, we would provide teachers and students some time to transition. We would want to make sure we can get materials to students, so have a pickup of materials and supplies. So we would want to give just a couple days for everyone to get settled into their home learning environment, get you all the information and your students the information they would need to connect remotely before beginning remote learning from home.
And just because we have been doing remote learning from home consistently with our Prep at Home families, we are in a much different position now than we were back in March. To make this work, teachers are much more prepared, and we're ready to go if we need to do that. All right, is there a community positivity rate that would move the entire school to virtual? Kelly?
There is not a specific community rate. When the decision to go full remote is considered, there's actually several metrics that go into that. First and foremost, we have to look at whether or not there's a mandate by the state or local governing body that requires us to go remote. Historically, private schools are not included in that. It's usually public, but given that it's a global pandemic, we have to think it could happen that way. And when we're trying to decide at Prep if we need to go full remote, we would look at case counts and positivity rates locally and statewide. We have to look at hospital capacity, which is critical in that decision. And here at Prep, we have to look at what are our case numbers, how many people are isolated and quarantined at any given time, and has it compromised our staffing capability? Because when we're looking at cases in quarantine, we certainly have staff that are involved in those numbers as well. So we have many, many things that we have to look at. There's not any one specific that may get heavier attention than the others. It's really a combination of all those things.
And one of the things that we've played out is that we're a very interconnected community, and we have many faculty, children in classes. So quarantining would have a dramatic impact on the school. So we will do it when we need to, and we will go remote if we have to. But one of the challenges is that we are very intimate and very connected. Next question is, can you clarify the school's policy with regard to working one-on-one with individual students? Is there a specific time limit permitted?
I can tell you that there is a time limit. With all our agencies, whether it's Department of Health or CDC, it has been identified that with COVID-19, it is important that you stay under 15 minutes in close contact with another individual. Close contact, that distance is 6 feet. So when our teachers work one-on-one with a student, they must be masked, and that time period has to be under 15 minutes over a 24-hour period. And as you can guess, that's kind of difficult for teachers to monitor with a full classroom, but they're actually doing an excellent job at doing just that. And it's no different for students doing partner work. They have to keep track of any partner work between two individuals that it does not exceed 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Has there been consideration of doing remote learning for the week after the holiday break to mitigate possible cases picked up during trace or family gatherings? Well, we have discussed that and we've decided not to do that. Kelly, can you provide some more context for that decision?
Yeah, theoretically, it sounds like a good idea. It would give families and our employees a week to make sure there is no illness developing after holiday travel or gatherings. However, that only works if all of our families and all of our employees come back home for that full week or do not have house guests for that full week. If families choose to continue their vacation, continue their time with family, it doesn't help us at all. And therefore, we can't enforce that. So it really doesn't make sense for us to attempt to do that.
Okay, next question is, any revised flexibility being offered to parents keeping their kids remote to provide more opportunities for them to have their child return to campus? Currently, there are only 2 opportunities in the entire school year for a prep and home student to return. I'm wondering if one of the division heads would like to answer that question. Evan, perhaps you?
As we assessed during the first trimester, we had originally said that we were going to have an opportunity only at the end of the first trimester. As we got to the middle of the first trimester, and we extended the opportunity for students to come back to campus, and some of them, some families took us up on that. As we go through the second trimester, I have to imagine we will do the same thing. We will assess again. We will know that there'll be some families who will be ready in the middle of the second trimester to come back. And so we'll offer it again. And then as we get to the end of the second trimester. A reminder is that the reason that we're not simply saying come back at sort of any time is we want to have the best continuity as we can for teaching and learning to make sure that students are in an environment that works for them. And not simply going back and forth between the modalities of teaching and learning.
Next question is, when a grade is notified for awareness of a case, are the parents of remote students in that grade also notified? And the answer to that is yes, they are.
Yes, when we have a positive case, there's multiple notifications that go out. After contact tracing, we notify, I personally will call parents of any student that's considered a close contact and that needs to quarantine. After that has been completed, I send an email to all parents in that particular grade level, letting them know the case did occur in your grade. That notification goes to on-campus learners and remote learners. And then finally, we notify the entire prep community that we have had a case. And that too goes to every family, regardless if you're on campus or at home, and every employee.
Just so you know, we're always comparing notes with other schools. Kelly's in constant contact with her colleagues at other area independent schools. I have a weekly call with area heads of schools, and we're comparing notes and lessons learned and actions that are effective. So we're always learning and adapting throughout this process. But one of our main consistent things is we want to be transparent and make sure we over communicate. So I think that also is a good policy. This is not a question, but it's one of those lovely statements. Just wanted to say thank you for all your efforts. Our family feels so fortunate to comfortably send our child to school during this time. Thank you. We're glad you feel comfortable, and we're doing our best to make that feeling feel real. Okay, here's another question. How do you know that the student that you announced was not at school during the incubation period?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about how that's determined, and it's through contact tracing. Once we knew we were coming back on campus and what this likely would look like, I did take a contact tracing course to make sure that I was thoroughly prepared to handle any of these cases that came our way effectively. So when we have a positive case, I begin that process by talking to the parent and possibly the student who is positive. When you are trying to figure out the infectious period for a symptomatic person who has developed a symptom and goes to get tested, if that is positive, you go back 48 hours from the first symptom. That is generally considered when the infectious period starts. So I would verify from that 48-hour period until the student is off campus who he or she has been in contact with from our PrEP community. I only contact trace for our PrEP community. The Department of Health does the tracing for people outside of PrEP. So then I speak to those teachers that taught during that period. We like to verify, were there any mask issues? Were there any compromised social distancing issues? It's important that we discuss lunch because, as you know, when our students eat lunch, they must be silent during the time they're eating. After they're finished eating, they can put their mask on and socialize. But it's very important that with the mask off, they're not talking because droplets and aerosol are constantly coming out when you talk and they're unmasked. So we identify all of those things and go from the infectious period forward.
Just one more thing to note on the preparation front. We recently hired a permanent substitute teacher to help us cover any faculty absences this year. And we just hired a second permanent sub that the board agreed to fund just to make sure we have coverage for any faculty absences. Waiting for more questions. In the interim, got another comment. Just want to express our family's gratitude to the administration and teachers for their hard work and diligence during this challenging time. We have confidence in your leadership and plans. You're all doing a wonderful job. Thank you for that. All right, here's another question. CDC.gov advised the following. SARS-CoV-2 transmission was limited in this congregate setting by integration of prevention strategies that include identification of asymptomatic infections through frequent testing. We earlier stated that any form of large-scale testing is not recommended. Are we aware who advised that large-scale testing is not recommended?
I believe it was the CDC who did not recommend it for schools. I'm speaking about schools when I address that particular question. And I can also look that up and send you an email later if I'm wrong, but I believe it was the CDC that doesn't recommend it for schools.
And here's a question. Slow COVID North Carolina is a good app to download, but how can that help us at schools if our students cannot use the app or don't have devices? Are teachers using this?
That is a purely optional app. I did send information out to all of our faculty here at PrEP when that app became available with details from the Department of Health, encouraging all of us to utilize it. And it's just, it really is just one more layer of protection, one more layer of identification. But if you have a strong contact tracing protocol, it basically does the same thing.
And Kelly, can you speak briefly about what we're seeing from other schools about school or in-school transmission?
Yeah, from what I'm gathering from all of our local independent schools is we're really not seeing transmission in the school. Most of the cases that are coming into the school are coming in from outside sources. For example, a student perhaps contracted COVID from a rec sports teammate or from a parent who's working outside the home, those kind of things, from a sleepover outside of school. And The good thing about that is we know that it's not being transmitted in the school, which helps us to verify that the mitigation techniques that we have chosen are working. If they weren't working, we would see it being transmitted in the school. For example, a student we know brings it in from home, and then 3 of those classmates become positive. That would tell us we've got a problem with mitigation. It's being transmitted within the school, but that has not happened here. And from what I understand at the other schools as well, that their mitigation is pretty much holding that spread.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, were the positive students in different grades?
Yes. If there had been evidence, for example, they were in the same class, if there had been evidence that that transmission occurred that way, you would know, because we would have had to take perhaps more measures for notifying you and cleaning and whatnot. But no, they were not. The only connection was that 2 were in a family. There was no other connection at prep.
Okay, we're still looking for more questions. One just came in. Okay, for what it's worth, Lawton is not doing any more or less than prep is, and they have also recently said that they aren't seeing in-school transmission. When they have quarantined close contacts of the few cases they've had, they have not seen any cases of contagion. So would agree that the measures we're taking and protecting the school, even when there have been cases, would agree with those measures we're taking. Okay, how are you communicating with students about transmission and balancing facts and their anxiety? I think this is a division head's question.
I think part of what we're doing is trying to remind them that what we're doing at school is so that we can continue to come and be at school. You know, some of the things we're doing are acknowledged to be difficult. Staying away from friends is difficult. Not being able to do everything that they want to be able to do at recess is difficult. But keeping the focus on the fact that we do get to come to school each day is really where we try and keep the focus. Not on you know, the sort of if we don't, then these are the terrible thing that's going to happen. So we, you know, our focus is on our community each day.
And I would add too that we have a great counselor here, Melissa Garnacia, and any time a teacher or division head identifies a student that may be having a difficult time with the mitigation or just understanding COVID or fears surrounding it, we are sure to notify Ms. G that that student needs some additional services.
We're waiting for more questions. Right now, there are no open questions. Kelly, is there anything you want to put on the table in the interim?
The one thing I wanted to remind everyone, I sent an email out yesterday. If you haven't had the opportunity to read it, I hope that you would find it helpful. I attempted to explain all the points in our COVID plan, our COVID policy, a little more simply so that you could gain a better understanding. Because it's really important that we adhere to all of the points in that policy, particularly about when to send your child to school, when to keep your child home, and call me. So please take a moment to read those as we're heading into a far more critical time than we have seen so far in this disease, so that we are careful to keep as many COVID-like illnesses off campus until we can identify if they in fact are positive cases.
Okay, we have more questions. Are there any supplies or items or even on-campus support that families can offer? I know that teachers are overwhelmed. Well, as far as support, I think the Parents Association is doing some really lovely things for our community, both faculty, staff, and students. And I would think they're the best group to connect with to kind of channel your desire to support us. Kelly, are there any supplies or other things that you think we might need from parents, or do you feel we're in pretty good shape?
Right now, we are in, as far as the health room, we're in very good shape. I did have a very generous parent at the beginning of the year who provided quite a bit of PPE for the health room. And we're in a really good place right now with all of our PPE. And as far as, I do want to say this, as far as help in other ways, it can't be said enough how hard our teachers are working right now and the extra hours that they are putting in. It is quite significant to plan and educate students on campus and at home at the same time. And while we are not allowing visitors on campus at this time to help with various things in the classroom, the power of a thank you, a gratitude, and a kindness can lift spirits so much right now. So I hope you'll keep that in mind when you're communicating with your teachers, that in and of itself can help in so many ways.
And I just have to note that parents have been super grateful in their comments to me and others on our staff. So we've definitely been on the receiving end of lots of great affirmations, and that it really does matter.
Mhm.
Okay, we have another comment. We're new to prep this year. We would be thankful in any case to become part of this great community. We are especially grateful for everything the staff is doing during this challenging time. We have great confidence in your approach. We have so much to be thankful for as we head into this holiday. Thank you for that. I agree with that. In fact, I'm going to be commenting on that in my Monday memo for next week, but I agree with you. All right, we have another question. Could you re-clarify the options for prep at home students in terms of moving to in-person? Thank you all for what is obviously hard and stressful work. Kudos to the incredible teachers and staff as well. Kelly should be knighted.
I'll just take a raise. Don't worry about the knighting.
Okay. So re-clarify the options for prep at home. Evan, you spoke to that. I don't know if you want to another shot, or Mimi, perhaps you want to weigh in there?
Sure. At the outset of the school year, we had kind of set those transitions between prep at home and on-campus learning at the term changes, which we will keep intact. During the first term, we did kind of open that up for prep at home students to transition to on-campus learning at the midterm point. And that was based on our observations, hearing from families that their students and them were ready to return. Really, our goal is to provide a stable learning environment for these students, because we know that transitioning from one to the other takes time. And so we want their time to be spent learning and not transitioning back and forth between different learning environments. So as we get into this next term, we will likely continue to consider opportunities for those students who are still learning at home to transition before the end of term 2. And if you and your family are interested in that, just reaching out to your division head and we can talk and work with your family on maybe the best time for that.
Thanks, Mimi. Sharon, this is going to go to you. Can you share more about how the early school primary students have adapted to the classroom procedures, masking, et cetera? Have these been effective for this age range?
Hi, can everybody hear me? I'm not sure if I'm
Yes.
okay, because I'm looking frozen to myself. I tried typing an answer. The early school children have been doing really well with the masking, with having individual workstations in the classroom. It's a little harder for them to stay 6 feet apart consistently, but they do pretty well. We're doing pretty well with reminders during lunch and snack to keep the children quiet so they're not talking without their masks. They've been working on changing how they do songs and things. So since they're not singing, so they're doing rhymes and chants and movement. They're doing a really good job with washing their hands frequently and using the hand sanitizer, and they have individual materials. So they've been handling it pretty well, and we've been pretty impressed with just how resilient they are, and that it's been effective. Things have been going pretty well.
Okay. Another comment. I'm extremely COVID-19 conscious and really appreciate this call. My kid is ready to return, and this was incredibly helpful. Thanks for staying diligent. And a huge thanks to you, Kelly.
Very welcome. Happy to help in any way. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you all have any questions, concerns, thoughts. I check my email, as you know, all day and all evening, because I know for many of you, you have questions about whether it's safe to send your child to school the next day, given maybe a symptom. So I do try to respond to all of those emails by 9 o'clock in the evening, and I check again around 6 a.m. So that I can let you know whether to keep your child home or send to school. So please contact me if I can help in any way.
Yeah, I just want to also echo that Kelly's just the kind of person that I want in the nurse's seat for a pandemic. She is super organized, hardworking, diligent, thorough, and is a tough customer. Like, we're not going to allow things to slip by. And I think our diligence is in part guided by Kelly's approach to health and safety, and it's served us all really well.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we still have some time for questions. If you have others to ask, we're here ready to answer them. In the interim, I'm thinking that Evan Kurtz wants to sing a song. Is that true?
Singing were allowed on campus, I would, Chris, but unfortunately.
Well played.
Yeah.
I'll give it a few more minutes to see if we have any other questions coming in. Okay, well, I hope we answered your questions in a way that was meaningful. Thank you all for being here with us. We have about 44 people joining us this morning, so a good crowd. And we will continue to, of course, communicate as often as we need to. And I hope you're all looking forward to the break next week that we'll all have. I think it's a well-timed break. Allow us to rest and recharge and come back and have a good 3 weeks before we have another nice break. So thank you again, parents, for all you're doing to support us. You've been amazing, and this has truly been a partnership. We've had an effective response because we've been united in our efforts. Faculty, staff, administration, trustees, parents, and students. Students have been amazing. I wish you could be on campus more often to see them. It feels like school. It certainly is different, but they're doing really, really well. So thank you for all of your work as well. And with that said, I think we'll sign off. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Be healthy.